Most Shonen Jump manga reveal trump cards or memorable special abilities early through the series that usually make or break them, ranging from just the protagonist or spread throughout different characters, with some more underwhelming or just straight up trash compared to others, while also getting the iconic ones over the years like our Bankais, Kurumas, or Kamehamehas. And Kaiju No.8's addition to the list doesn't disappoint, as we get creations built from monsters of complete mass destruction, leveling entire cities put into the hands of the defense force in Kaiju No.8. And in this video, we'll do a breakdown of numbered weapons, various abilities, and relatively how strong they are compared to each other, as well as how they're created. Let's get started. The numbered weapons, similar to the rest of the Defense Force's arsenal, are bioweapons, made of kaiju cells consisting of their muscle fibers and what the Defense Force calls Yuna organs, with the strength of the nerve link that is created between the soldier and weapon deciding the energy output. In other words, how much of the innate power of the kaiju they can use and ability to train with it further to fully release its power. To explain the creation of numbered weapons further, we have to go over the missing or unrevealed main 10 kaiju so far and my theory on where a couple are. The unexplained kaiju are 3, 5, and 7. With the explosive force of Numbers Weapon 2 introduced, as we'll talk about later, Kaiju number 3 was probably destroyed in combat, and I theorize was the one they used to mass produce the kaiju cell suits for all Defense Force officers. Like how the specialized ones are made for singular individuals, being that nerve linking is too difficult to be compatible with for most people and difficult to be strong enough for, including 5 and 7 that I think haven't found compatible nerve link users yet. Now, since that's explained, we can go back and start with Numbers Weapon 1, belonging to Captain Narumi, created from the well-known Future Sight Kaiju, especially since power like it had never been seen before. As the name Future Sight Kaiju suggests, in our first full display of its power, his opponent with inside information explains its ability as pseudo-foresight. Simply reading the electrical signals his target emits and using that information to predict their movements, therefore not being able to predict the movements of inorganic threats that are present or being controlled. This technically isn't wrong, but little does his opponent know is that when it was still a kaiju, then the pseudo-foresight for Kaiju 1 would still be applicable, but Captain Narumi pulls a Kaioken and increases the power of the ability to being able to not only see electrical body signals, but also electrons, fluctuations in temperature, and the terrain through the eyes he manifests through his body. I say pull a Kaioken because the one tiny drawback to doing this is it starts completely frying Narumi's brain. But other than that, it's one of the more OP numbers weapon. But speaking about OP, the next one maybe isn't a Sharingan-like ability like the last, but takes another approach by Hulk smashing anything in the way. Numbers Weapon 2 is the first numbers weapon shown in the manga, being used by director Shinomiya, and the brute force of it is unmatched at this point of the story, especially compared to the other numbered weapons that specialize in different areas. The design of Numbered Weapon 2 takes the destructive power of the kaiju it's created from and forms it into gloves, with piston-like attachments on each to more precisely spread the power or just condense masses of energy behind each strike. Lastly, it can actually manifest the head of the kaiju to fire an even greater blast that we see for a brief amount of time, but other than a brief backstory and a description of its pridefulness, we unfortunately don't see too much of it. Without spoiling too much, let's just say it gets decommissioned early on in the story, but is one of the most powerful weapons and will probably be brought back in the future. Numbers Weapon 4 was gone at the start of the story, but is actually one of the weapons brought back after the last wielder and also director Shinomiya's wife was killed in combat, and eventually passed down to their daughter Kokoro, who we see at the beginning of the story that I mentioned in the last kaiju video that I made, who seems to be the only compatible user, and like her mother easily uses it and trains in it. This numbered weapon is more on the simple side though, and relies on one thing and one thing only: speed. Being the only numbers weapon that grants the wielder to fly, Kokoro is able to show up where the defense force needs it in the blink of an eye, literally. to the point where keeping up with her movements is impossible for most kaiju, and even in the defense force, that makes me wonder if even Narumi's foresight would be able to keep up, especially when she fully releases the power of Numbers Weapon 4. But after all the speed and power of the last numbered weapons, Numbers Weapon 6 builds on all of it, by having almost all the explosive power and speed with more of a focus on slowing and weakening with the use of ice. The return of Ichikawa being a focus to the story follows an almost 10-chapter arc of him trying to use the Numbers Weapon 6, as in the beginning he blacks out from wearing a small portion of it, but gets to the point where he can unleash about 50% of its power, letting him fire multiple rounds of ice in their kaiju training, until eventually struggling to control its power as he has a mental breakdown trying to handle the situation and his ego, really. The craziest part of Numbers Weapon 6 is it's only used a fraction of its power in the story, compared to the other weapons that usually get pretty close to, if not a full release. Since Ichikawa starts losing his shit pretty early on, it could end up as if not the strongest numbered weapon, then very well damn close. With the rest of the numbered kaiju either still being kaiju or unaccounted for, we have arrived at the last numbered weapon, Numbers Weapon 10. As probably the coolest and most drippy of the numbered weapons, we get a full display of the newest Defense Force prototype, but this time the kaiju is still conscious, and actively affecting the nerve link on its end, as well making it simultaneously the strongest and weakest numbers weapon so far because of that. Being a brute force type kaiju, we see kaiju number 10 being a pain in the ass to work with, as Hoshino tries to give it commands. Eventually, on some Kurama shit after arguing for a while, they both respect each other and truly just realize they're a lot alike before beginning their flurry of blades on their opponent and using insane speed to try and win their debut match. That did happen more recently in the series, with Hoshino being a master swordsman. It was less flashy, but since it happened recently, I won't go into too many details. But it still made sure to push all of his limits in the hand-to-hand combat. And did I mention this one's design? Either way, I will again, because it's way too clean with the all-black look, the black Air Force energy look. It's awesome. Anyway, that about does it for the video. I did kind of insinuate at the beginning that I would rank them, but then slowly started realizing as I was going through the video that that could be its own video, especially since we don't have too much information on all of them, so I would look out for that. But if I had to rank them at this moment, it would go 4, 1, 6, 10, and 2, with Kokoro being in the top spot, with Narumi slightly behind her, only because Narumi's foresight is fast, but I'm not sure if it's fast enough to keep up with Kokoro. Anyway, that is a whole nother video that I can explain, and obviously 10 and all that stuff is down near the bottom only because of the sentiency of the kaiju, making it harder to nerve link with, therefore use. So yeah, that is just another whole video. But if you did like what you heard, if you could comment any other kaiju content you would like to see, or just what you're excited about for Kaiju number 8, please let me know in the comment section. I would appreciate it. I've been your boy Nimbus. I'll catch you in the next one. Peace.